Inenda, and Kappa, and Kappa, and Iota, and Theta, Eta, and Zeta, and Epsilon, and Delta, and Gamma, and Beta, and Alpha. Good job! Yay! Can you read them? Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Theta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, London, Moon, Psi, Omicron, Pi, Yo, Sigma, Tau, Epsilon, Phi, Chi, and Omega.
Well, I hope you heard that. Let me stop share here. Let me make sure I'm recording. I think it's recording. I hope you heard that. The intent was to provide encouragement. If he's not a scholar, I don't know who is. You know, that's, and I can't do it backwards, so it's impressive.
No, I can't do it either.
Yeah. So the point is, if young Adrian at 2.5 years old is able to learn the alphabet, we can too. And so as we go through, we'll try to help each other to get through and understand. What I want to do is, this first part of this is sort of talk about the resources we're going to use to help us to get comfortable with the alphabet and the pronunciation as well as the nouns. Let me talk a little bit. Let me pull up another screen and let's see. I think I want to start with the syllabus here and do a screen share. Okay, I assume you can see the syllabus. And there's my contact information. If you're having concerns or questions and you run into a problem, I have no problem just reaching out to me, either email or text, or give me a call. And although I may not be able to solve or work the problem right that moment, I'll certainly make sure that an answer gets back to you. This course introduces the basic grammar and vocabulary of Biblical Greek. It's intended to prepare you to translate, to interpret, and to apply Scripture and use the Greek in your biblical studies. You'll learn the essentials of grammar and adequate vocabulary. Really, when you break this down, there's really two things you're going to learn. You're going to learn grammar and you're going to learn vocabulary. Both take time and they're both separate efforts. You have to put time in both. And what I recommend is that for every hour of class, you put in about 3 to 4 hours outside of the class and prepare it. Hold on a minute, I got a chat coming in. Let me see what that chat is. Okay, Patricia sends a note, says, I'm very delighted and excited for this great opportunity to grow and expand another capacity of the Kingdom of God. She holds a PhD in Health Information and Management, and I'm a school and owner of my own medical school, which is a ministry. The Lord has charged her in her hands. I'm an associate minister at her church. So we're glad to have you, Patricia. Hopefully we'll get to be able to communicate a little better by next week. You'll have to look into it. Maybe we could talk on the phone, and maybe we could test this out with you before then. The intent here is that to learn the essentials of grammar and an adequate vocabulary. I like the book we're going to use. You'll learn most of the words that occur in the New Testament Greek 50 times or more. I think, Jeremy, this is the same book that I know we used at Fried Hardeman when I was taking. I think they're still using Basics of Biblical Greek there with Mounce's book. So.
Correct.
Okay. The objective is to understand the basic grammar of Biblical Greek, to know foundational Greek vocabulary words, and we'll go over those even tonight. We'll translate from the Greek New Testament with some helps. We'll use the Biblical Greek as a tool for your ministry to better understand and communicate God's Word. We utilize commentaries so that you can be able to utilize commentaries and biblical resources that require knowledge of the Greek language. You can dive so much deeper into God's Word when you have the ability to understand it from His original language perspective. Let me warn you, unknowing Greek doesn't solve all the mysteries or the confusions in some areas, but it does give you a greater depth and a greater perception. My first Greek teacher, Brother David Decker, explained it this way, and I think he got it from his first Greek teacher. It's like watching, learning Greek versus English. It's like the difference between a black and white and a color TV. Certainly, you can enjoy your television show in black and white, but it's so much greater in color, and that's the same in the language. Certainly, you can go to heaven with an English Bible, but there's greater depth and understanding, and it's so much better in color in the Greek language. And so it's worth the effort to get there. It will help your ministry in many ways, and hard to explain until you actually have done it. Some materials that I want to recommend. There's billmounts.com. I'd recommend to go to that site. I want to point out a couple things. Matter of fact, I want to go there. I meant to have it up already. And go to billmounts.com. I want to point out a few things. So let me share screen with that. New share. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you could see my website now. I'm at billmounts.com. It used to be technia.com. And matter of fact, if you have some of the old textbooks, it'll say technia. Technia is a Greek word for child. But if you go to billmounts.com, he has several resources that are online or free. A Greek dictionary. You can download the Technia Greek font that he uses in the Unicode to work the keyboard. I'll tell you what I do. I have loaded the SBL, Society of Biblical Literature font, and that's predominantly so that I can read other people's Greek when it's transferred over the internet to me. But because I have Microsoft Word, I also just download the Greek version of Microsoft Word. So basically, I have Word in English and Word in Greek, and so I use the Greek word for that. But you can use their Greek font in Technia Greek, or the SBL Greek. And basically, download the Unicode is for your keyboard to work. The biblical Greek answer sheets are here. Flashworks is a great tool for studying vocabulary. There's some songs and some other alphabet, some things to help. But some of the things that are really most useful is go to the first year Greek, and we click in the first year Greek, and we're going to be going track 1. I'll show you in a minute the difference between track 1 and 2. But in track 1, and here is all the different courses or the chapters of the book that you have. And if you go, for example, tonight's class is we'll do alphabet and pronunciation. And so there's a study guide. You can download an overview, watch a chapter overview in which he will present an overview of the chapter. A song sheet for the alphabet. You can get the alphabet in a song in MP3 format.
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon.
And so all of these things are very useful. Alphabet summary and Erasmus pronunciation. I'm going to go over that in a little bit. Alphabet summary versus the modern pronunciation. And then you get the lecture, the video. And the first 2 or 3 are free. And he basically goes over the chapter, not word for word, but a summary of it in about 20 minutes. It's very useful, especially as a help. It's not as useful if you're taking it all by yourself, but it's worthwhile to either review this before you come into class or afterwards as a review, and then questions we can talk about in the class type thing. I love the basic and biblical Greeks because it has so many resources to help a student. And then there's some exercises. If we go to one of the later chapters, that will go chapter 6, for example, it includes the homework, and you get some warm-ups where you basically, you'll get the homework, and it asks you to translate hey hurrah, erkatai. Erkatai means either he, she, or it comes. We'll get to that later. Hey hurrah, by the time you get through chapter 6, you'll know what that means. And if you've forgotten, it gives you a hint. And that's not much of a hint, hurrah. But the answer is the hour comes. So the homework is actually here. Well, it's in your workbook, but you can go over it here as well. He provides the additional information about it. So it's a very useful tool. And so I just wanted you to see some of the resources. One more thing I wanted you to see. Let me see if I can go to, without changing screens. I don't know if I can do that. Let me try it this way. Okay, let me do it this way. I want to go to Amazon. So I assume you have the book. The book we'll be using was the Basics of Biblical Greek by William Mounts. I think I've got the second edition. The third edition's out. They're almost exactly the same. Only difference is the second edition is a little older, and it mentions some things like technia.com, which aren't there anymore, and stuff like that. You do need the workbook. The book itself is about $32. You can get it used for less. You do need the workbook. I don't recommend getting used. You need the workbook. Our homework will be from the workbook, and we'll probably do some of the tests from the workbook. It's about $20. You might find it cheaper used for $10. I'm not sure used is a good idea. It may be missing pages. I don't know. You'll have to check. Those are what's required for the class. There's some other things that are helps. There's this Biblical Greek laminated sheet. It's very useful. Everything that we go over in Greek 1 and Greek 2 is in this laminated sheet. So it's a 4-page, 2 outside pages and 2 inside pages. Very useful. I've got that, and I use it all the time. It will give you the noun endings and gives you the alphabet. It gives you prepositions and the verbs and these type of things. One more recommendation, or a couple more. You do need to have vocabulary cards. Now, whether or not you buy theirs or you make your own. A lot of students will make their own, a 3x5 index card, and you make them as flashcards so that you can practice your Greek vocabulary. If you struggle in your English grammar, I was never a good student in English grammar. Most of us who grew up in English, we may have an aptitude towards that, but we didn't exactly grow up learning grammar. We grew up learning the phonics of English, and school teaches us the grammar. But most of us got to an age where we don't really remember it. However, this is a useful book that talks about the English grammar. It's a very small book, but it has a chapter on all the major sections, nouns, prepositions, and such, which helps you understand from an English perspective. It's not a required book, but it is a useful book that is something that you're struggling in that regard and may help you. I think that's all I wanted to show from there. Let me go back to my, there we go. Some of the required materials are the Basic Biblical Greek from Bill Mounts and his workbook. There are some resources. I love the Bill Mounts. I've had several. I've taken Greek with George School of Preaching in some other places. And Bill Mounts, I personally believe, is one of the best because it has a great building foundation. I've used other books. They are they don't have the same building block kind of foundation, and you're learning a lot of stuff that you're not going to use till later. For the most part, Bill Mounts only teaches you what you need at that moment, and you build from that, and it makes it much easier. The class is structured by using PowerPoint presentation and videos and hands-on uses in the New Testament Greek, which we will do some reading as time goes on. The reason you got to have vocabulary or have the microphone. You can expect to spend at least another 4 to 5 hours per chapter, or really another 3 to 4 hours per hour of class time. It is a language. It takes a lot of time. The best way to study is if you know someone else that wants to take the class with you, or if you want to work with, have a partner, whether that be through a distant learning. I could set up a Zoom meeting for someone, or but it's always better to have someone else. If not, you have to dedicate time. Don't say, I'm going to try to do a little bit each day and then not have a set time of day, because things will always get in the way. Pick a time in the day, early in the morning, late in the evening, early in the afternoon, whatever works for you. And every single day, spend some time, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 45 minutes, whatever you're able to do, and go through the vocabulary, go through the grammar that we're going to learn. The classwork participation, in other words, being here makes a difference. Just watching the video is insufficient. We need feedback, we need discussion. Homework is going to be 30% of the total grade if you're taking it for credit. And tests, there will be about 3 of them. That's 60% of total, 20% each. Grading scale is a typical grading scale that you would get in most places. As I mentioned before, study group makes language a lot easier. If you're not able to do that, and even if you are able to do that, you want to use as many senses that you can. Obviously, taste is the sense you probably won't use, probably not touch, but as often as you can speak the language so that you can hear it. If you can hear it played, there are, matter of fact, let me pull up one more thing. Let me find where I put that. Where's that at? Let's see.
Aphabet, gamma, delta,
That's not it.
epsilon.
Okay, let me just do that. Let me share this. There we go.
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, psi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, keep, psi, omega. Very nice. It's catchy. Thanks. But to be honest, I could have used a little more cowbell. I thought it sounded pretty good. I'm telling you, you need the cowbell louder. Don't you think it's gonna drown me out? I gotta have more cowbell. Okay. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, psi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, keep, psi, omega.
Okay, here's the point. Use every sense you can in learning the alphabet and the words so that you can speak it and say it. Let me stop share that there. Hold on a minute. Go back to use every tool that you have available in order to practice the Greek. The more you're able to say it out loud, don't read in silence, even though people may look at you funny, say it out loud. It makes a tremendous difference as you begin to try to learn the language and pronounce it out loud. So it takes time, it takes effort. The more resources you use, the more faculties you use. I take my, I didn't bring them with me, I take my flashcards and they're on a little ring. Let's see if I got the ring with me. I don't know where I put them. I put them on a little ring of which I can, they're a little circular ring, and which you can get well, I got some at Kroger, and you get some at these, oh, I forget. But anyway, it's just a little ring that claps open, and so you can put your cards. I take them with me in the car, and I don't read them while I'm driving, at least I'm not supposed to. But when I'm at a stoplight, I practice my vocabulary. When I go to the doctor or something, I'm in the waiting room, I practice my vocabulary. Take every opportunity you can to practice your vocabulary, and then spend as much time as you can focusing on practicing and working on the grammar. So it just takes time, and you're going to have to put the time in. Shouldn't have to say it, but academic honesty is certainly part of this. Although most of my tests are not going to be, they're going to be pretty much open book. However, I can tell, generally speaking, I can tell if your translation is something you did or something you pulled from an existing English translation. Any language, translation is both an art and a science. There's a science to it in that there's words are formed a certain way, words are they are structured in a sentence a certain way. So there's a science in that respect, but there's still an art. There's no such thing as a word-for-word translation. That's not a feasibility. And there's an art associated with it. That's one of the reasons, not the only reason, we have so many different translations. There's different ways to express the Greek word in English. So I don't care what language you're going from or to, there's no such thing as a word-for-word translation, so we have so many options. Let me then now move to, I think, next thing is we're going to go ahead and go to chapter 3 of the book and begin. Let me open up my PowerPoint here. Let me stop share. A new share, and where's my PowerPoint? Let's see. There it is. Okay. Share screen. PowerPoint. Share screen. Jeremy, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you. So I want to start by remembering, if you remember back in Genesis chapter 11, God had, the people had disobeyed God, and he had commanded them to multiply and fill the earth. Well, the people refused to fill the earth. Instead, they gathered together in one area, probably in the region of Babylon, and they began to build this tower, more than likely a ziggurat. And ultimately, they were exalting themselves to build themselves up as equal as God. God had commanded them to fill the earth. That was to go. Well, because they did not, God confused the languages. And as a result of that, confusion of language resulted in inability to understand. And so they scattered, which is what the command was to do, was to fill the earth. And so knowing that the languages were confused because of mankind was disobedient to God's word, we have to know that God understood that there would be a means of which to bring a common language of which he can express his will to us. And so the Koine Greek during the time of the Alexander the Great's conquest came in the Koine Greek language. Just a very small background. The Greek, like any language, has very many dialects. They are different, they sound different, they have different usage. You go, and Greek, like any language, evolves over time. The Greek language was in Homer's time frame, in Socrates, and I'm going blank, Plato and Aristotle, and over time these languages, that was the classical Greek, had migrated. Well, when Alexander the Great conquered the world per se, these languages basically built off the Attic is a predominant one, and they became blended with other regions, and ultimately that's how we got our Koine Greek in a very simplistic view. Tonight what we want to do is, we already went over the syllabus, talked a little bit about the books and the resources. Now we're going to go ahead and dive into chapter 3 and 4. We probably won't take a break because it won't take us, well, we might here, because 3 and 4 might take a few minutes. Seeing how I'm doing all the talking, it'll go a little faster. Normally I'd have others to, I've never done this class online, Patricia. I've done this class before in a classroom, and I'm able to react to the students when I say something, get that cold look, or that, I didn't understand what you're talking about, and so that feedback allows me to help explain. That's more difficult in this case, and it's so I have to depend upon us to be able to communicate, and but hopefully we'll figure out how to make it work. So in chapter 3, the function in chapter 3 is the alphabet and the pronunciation. I don't know if you've had a chance to go through, Patricia, the basic of Biblical Greek at all and look at the alphabet. I'll walk through it. You're going to have to practice it. Normally I like to hear your feedback, but there's the nice thing about the Greek alphabet is compared to our English, the English has, how many letters is English? 26 letters in the English alphabet, and there's 24. So there's 2 less in Greek. The nice thing about the Greek compared to the English is the overwhelming majority of the English or the Greek language alphabet is similar, very similar, if not exact, to the English. There are some exceptions, and we'll touch on those. The other thing is, well, we'll just go through it. So go through the alphabet. We have alpha, which is pronounced as an a father. There's actually 2 ways to, like a long A, short A. We're going to stick right now for father. We'll do, that's the short A. The long A will come up a little later. Alpha, beta as in b, gamma as in g. It's a hard G sound like in gift. Delta, we're familiar with delta, especially if you've been in sorority, you know, or whatever the other one's called. But a delta like in debt, epsilon as in et. Now you can do a long or short epsilon as well. Right now we'll just have the zeta, that's like our Z sound, as in Zion, or days with a DZ sound. Normally when the zeta is in the middle or the end of a word, it has a DZ sound. When it's in the beginning, it will normally just have a Z sound. It's a little technical. It doesn't make a big difference, but there's a slight difference in pronunciation. We're not going to get critical, and you don't get tested on pronunciation. The eta looks like an N. Don't get it confused with the English N. It's an eta, which sounds like a long A, obey. So it's an A sound. Then theta, very familiar to most English-speaking people because of sororities. It's a TH sound, theme. Iota. As a young boy, he said iota. You can have in pit, it, or magazine, in. So there's both a long and a short iota. Kappa, pretty straightforward, like in kit. Lambda, like in long. Mu, as in man. Nu, it looks like an V, but that is a nu. It's pronounced like an N, but it looks like a V. So it is a nu, or like a no. XZ, now this gives a lot of people trouble. We're not used to this, but it's like an X, as in relax. So it's a little harder to write, and it's one of the things I'm going to struggle with in this class. I'm normally right on the board, so we can practice that. You do have to learn to write it. The book kind of goes over the writing, so hopefully you'll see that. I might try a couple of things on the screen a little later. Omicron, this is the short O sound as an A, as an omelet. Now the boy said pie. You know, some pronounce it as P. So either way, it's a pit sound as in pay. This is a rho. It's not a P. A rho has an R sound as in ring. I don't know what I'm doing here. Hold a minute. The sigma is an S. It looks like a little O with a little hat on it, like a little ball cap. The sigma is used at the beginning. This sigma with the ball cap looking is used at the beginning of a sentence or beginning of a word or in the middle of the word. When the sigma is at the end of the word, it has what's called a final sigma. Well, this actually looks like an S, although the tail end is shortened. So it looks like an S, but it just sort of drops off and forgets. It's pronounced like we normally would an S, sing. So it's a sigma. Tau is a T, and like we would expect, a tail. Upsilon, there's a long and a short upsilon, and pronounced like oob, tube. Phi, like in a PH sound in phonics, phonetics. A key. Key comes from the back of your throat, almost if you're going to basically spit. It's key, and like in chemical. C as looks like the little Satan's top of his little what's that thing called he holds, pitchfork, and be like a C as in taps, and then omega as in O, a long O sound. Now let me say something about pronunciation. There are two different ways. There are multiple ways. The two predominant ways, I know the way I learned and I know the way Jeremy learned, is called the Erasmus pronunciation. Erasmus was the man in 1516 that produced the first Greek New Testament. He did it with the purpose of proofreading, validating his new Latin text with it. And he came up with a system of pronunciation. The great thing about that is it helps us to differentiate most of the sounds. The omega is a long O, the omicron is a short O, so that's an A versus an O, and there's some other things that help different. So the Erasmus pronunciation is probably not the original. Most people don't know exactly what the original is, but more than likely the original is closer to what the modern is, although that's not close to the original either, but it's closer to. The difference being is some sounds really don't have a difference. Omicron would be a long O. Instead of being omelet, it'd be omelet. This would still be tone, so that you wouldn't be able to differentiate. So the reason I like to use the Erasmus pronunciation is, number one, most of the universities use the Erasmus. When I take my Greek classes at Amherst, they don't use the Erasmus pronunciation, and he gets all over me for not using his view of pronunciation, but I don't let it bother me. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're able to communicate with someone that you're speaking to, you're probably not going to go out and speak Greek to people per se, but if you're speaking to another scholar, another person that is learning Greek, or another person that has learned Greek, then you want to be able to understand each other, and that's really all we're trying to do at this level anyway. So the alphabet, normally we practice and we spend time here, so that's why I think we'll finish early tonight, but we have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. It's critically important that you learn the alphabet, not just the sounds, but what each letter is and is named. You need to know both of those and how they're pronounced. So you've got to spend time with the alphabet and use every sense you can. Learn it in groups. Don't try to learn everything at one time. Do it in groups of 5, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa. So learn it in groups, and when you learn one group, go to the next, and then put the 2 together. Then go to the next and put the 3 together until you can do the whole thing. You need to learn it quickly, because pretty quick we're going to actually start reading the Greek. And well, we have to be able to read it in order to be able to translate it. And so anyway, that's critical that you spend the time in this next week if you haven't already looked at it. The alphabet, they're vowels. There are more vowels in the Greek than there are in English. The alpha, epsilon, eta, iota, omicron, upsilon, and omega are the vowels. There's more we could say about that, but at this point we'll just leave that alone. I think if you look in your book on page 9, it gives you more information. Let's see if there's anyone. It gives you a lot of things that how the, well, there's some in section 3.2, there's some that are very similar to English, and then it talks about some that are transliterated with 2 letters versus 1 letter and such. But the vowels are alpha, epsilon, eta, iota, omicron, upsilon, and omega. If I remember right, let's see, the alpha can be either short or long. That will make a difference as we move forward. The epsilon can be short or long. So the epsilon is long, so it's long as in met. The eta can be, trying to remember now, the eta is long, and let's see, the iota can be either short or long. The omicron is short, that one I remember for a fact, and the upsilon can be short or long, and the omega is long. So Omega and eta are long. Only one I'm confused about is eta, or epsilon, I mean. Yeah, the two that are long. Let's see, he's got it on page. What page does he have this on?
I think it's on page 9, maybe mine is 3.35.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find where he says which ones are short or long. Pronouncing the letters. Okay, and on page 9, 3.3.5, alpha and iota can either be long or short. Epsilon and omicron are always short. That's what it is. The epsilon is short. Omicron is always short. Eta and omega are always long. And so we'll talk more about that as we go. The diphthongs are pretty straightforward. There are two letters. If they end two letters that ends in a iota, is a dip alpha iota, epsilon iota, omicron iota, upsilon iota. Those are diphthongs, and they are treated as one vowel. That's important, especially come to pronunciation. So just like in English, we have a diphthong, alpha or AI, and it's pronounced as an isle. So alpha iota is pronounced like an isle. Epsilon iota is pronounced an 8 as an A. Oil for omicron iota. An upsilon iota would be like in sweet, and we'll see that when we see the Son of God is weos. And so we'll see the upsilon iota there. The alpha, and so when it ends in some of the vowels that end in an upsilon, alpha upsilon, epsilon upsilon, omicron upsilon, those are also diphthongs, again treated as one vowel, so it's one sound. Ow as in sauerkraut, oo as in feud, oo as in group. And these are diphthongs, and these are also what do they call them on? Well, they're iota subscript, but they're it doesn't matter. I forget what they call them now. What happens is where the alpha and the iota instead of being side by side, the iota subscripts, and they got the little iota underneath it. That's what that little dash is underneath there. Same with the eta and same with the omega. These are called iota subscripts. And what happens is you don't pronounce the iota as you do here. Here you got the alpha iota and its isle. Here it's just a or ah. I mean to move this stuff around. And same with here, it's the eta. So it's an A sound, and this is the ah sound, the omega sound. You'll see this as we go further with it. But just to be familiar with it, there is a iota subscript, and it's called an irregular something, I forget now. But and here's where we take time and practice, but that's pretty hard to do. I do have a pen, and I have been practicing with this pen. But what happens is, actually I have to put it in, I have to open it up to do that. I don't want to do that now because, well, anyway, it didn't work well. And so I've got to figure that out a little better to make this work. And so we'll practice. That's something new for me. So we've got the alphabet. We have the vowels. We have the diphthongs, which are also the vowels. They're treated as one. Iota subscripts, also vowels. And then we have what's called accents, breathing, and punctuation. Accents, when they believe that accents were used to change the pitch of the sound. We don't try to change the pitch. One, I'm not musically inclined. Basically, we have 3 accents, and all we do is use that to stress where the accent goes. This is the word luo, and so we stress the upsilon, luo. Here is a different kind of accent called a grave. I'll tell you about it in a minute. And pronunciation is the same. It's just where I put the stress is. It's luo and a circumflex. Now, a circumflex in some books is just going to look like an upside down U. In the font that I use, it gives a little wavy line. That's still a circumflex. What that was originally is you'd have a start with a low, you'd go up in pitch and back and down. But for us, it's nothing more than a place to know where we're putting the stress on that syllable. So luo, luo, ao, to. And so that's where the stress is put. Now the acute is when it's pointing down from down to the left. When it's pointing the opposite direction, it's called a grave. When it's a wavy line or an upside down U, it's a circumflex. There are some rules which we'll touch a little bit on those tonight, but right now just to introduce you to them. There is punctuation in Greek, although there wasn't much of it in the original manuscripts, but there is in the Greek Bibles that we use today. A comma in Greek looks like a comma in English, so there's nothing new to learn there. A period in Greek looks like a period in English. However, a semicolon, that's not right. A semicolon in Greek, this is not right, is really just the top dot here. It's only one dot. I don't know why I've got two there. So a semicolon is one dot at the very top, and it then looks like a semicolon. So this is where I wish I had. Let me see if I can type here. Hold on a minute. Let me just see if I can type and using Greek, change my font. And so if I go alpha, I'll make sure I got the right color. Alpha, okay, so we change the size so you can see it. Okay, so if I want to use a question mark in Greek, actually, I forget how to type question mark. No, this is where I wish I had my pen and I can draw it. Well, that's not going to work. I'll have to figure it out. The semicolon looks like our English semicolon, but it has just the one dot above. The question mark looks like our semicolon, and in English it's a question mark, but it looks like our semicolon. That's confusing, but these are the only two that are different in English. Our question mark looks like our semicolon. Their semicolon is just a single dot, and we transliterated with a semicolon. There are what's also called breathing marks. A smooth breathing mark, here's where I wish my pen worked, is basically a backwards, or it looks like a comma. It's a comma that goes above the, where am I at? Let's see. If it goes above the vowel, if the vowel is the first letter of the word, that comma would be a smooth breathing mark. If it's in a diphthong, it goes over the second letter. Remember, we treated diphthong as one vowel. It goes over the second letter. The purpose of the breathing mark, if it's smooth, it looks like a comma above the vowel. It does not change a thing to its pronunciation, not at all. But it is necessary for the spelling, let's say. However, a rough breathing mark, and it's hard to see this one, it looks like a backward comma. It's also above the vowel of the first letter, and what the rough breathing mark does, that I know I can type. Let me type that. Let me get it large enough that you can see it. Let me get it large enough that you can see it. Let me see. And so a rough breathing mark would be, it helps if I use the right color, doesn't it? So you have a backward comma. A smooth breathing mark would be, it looks like a comma. If you're doing a diphthong, for example, alpha, iota. I didn't want to capitalize that. It does it automatically, and I don't like that. So it goes over the second one, and that's all that's showing you. So basically, a rough breathing mark adds the H sound to it. So if it starts with this takes a little longer when I'm doing this with the computer. If I have a rough breathing mark with an A, let me switch back to English here, and so we'll go to, that would be like a ha sound. So instead of being pronounced like aw, it'd be pronounced like ha, because the rough breathing gives an H sound. So hopefully that's kind of clear. So anyway, let's move on. And so that's chapter 3. That's all there is in chapter 3. You learn the alphabet. That's the most important thing to learn. We're going to focus on the lowercase. It's called the minuscules. And so you don't have to focus on the uppercase, which is called either the majuscules or uncials. You will see the uppercase when they're used in like the name of a person or the name of a city, like Galilea. They will use that, so it helps to be familiar. But they're only used unless you go back to the original manuscripts. In the original manuscript, they're all written in uppercase, and you've got to know it then. But we're not going to do that. Predominantly, you're going to see it written in the lowercase, which is called the minuscules. And so best to learn that, learn how to pronounce it. The vowels, alpha, iota, eta, alpha, epsilon, iota, alpha, epsilon, eta, iota, omicron, upsilon, omega. The breathing marks, the rough breathing mark and the smooth breathing mark. Smooth breathing mark does not change the pronunciation, but the rough does. The diphthongs, you make sure you know that they function as one vowel and one sound. And so that's really all you have to learn in the first chapter. But it's very important you learn that. So by the time we get together next week, it's important you're able to recognize the alphabet. You really want to know it as well as you know your English alphabet. It will save you so much trouble down the road if you spend time and you can know it that well. Chapter 4 talks about pronunciation and syllabification, punctuation, syllabification, and then vocabulary. If you guys don't mind, we got a little late start, and we're probably finished a little early, simply because we're not having much interaction. So it won't take too long to go through this, and it's recorded so you can go back through it. The recordings, by the way, I'm going to upload them to a YouTube site, and as soon as I learn exactly how to do that and what the address is, I will send you the link to that so that you can watch the recordings on your leisure. Now, they'll stay up there as long as we're doing the class. Once we finish the class, they'll come back off. So anyway, we go back over. Normally, I go back over the Greek alphabet again one more time. The more you do this, the better off you are. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Let's do it slow. Alpha. I hope you're pronouncing it out loud too. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. I would normally stop, and this next slide is where you get to do it. So take a moment, Patricia, and make sure you're able to do this. If you have questions, obviously you're not able to speak to me now, but send me the questions, and we can get together on the phone or something later time. So here's where I would normally ask the class to go through it and practice this. We do it very slowly, do it together in the class. Everyone will go alpha, everyone will go beta, everyone will go gamma, and so forth, and we do that very slowly. We go back through as a review the vowels, alpha, epsilon, eta, iota, omicron, epsilon, omega. The diphthongs function as a single vowel. They sound like I, a, oi, ui, ow, u, oo. And then the iota subscript. And these are very important, and you'll see why as we move forward. Talk a little bit about punctuation. As we mentioned before, the period and comma are the same. The semicolon is a single dot above the line. This is in English, so they just got semicolons here. I can't do a single dot above the line. And the question mark is looks like an English semicolon. In chapter 3, we learned about we didn't go over it in class because it comes up in chapter 4 again. It's called a diathesis. I always struggle with this. A diathesis. And that's where there are two dots, and I don't think I don't have the text to write it with. There are two dots above what might be a diphthong. They give you an example on page on page 10. Yeah, they talk about. I gotta get my glasses so I can see. Hazios. If you look at page 10 at 3.5, number 4, it talks about you'll find some words that have two vowels that normally would form a diphthong, such in Isaiah. But when there's this diaeresis above it, then that's giving you a signal that that is not a diphthong, and so you pronounce those vowels separately. So that would be hey, that's a smooth breathing, so it'd be sa, ias, asaias for Isaiah. There's also an apostrophe when, just like in English, we have the word can't, it's cannot, and so we cut short the abbreviated by taking the CAN and putting an apostrophe with the T at the end for can't. They do the same thing in the Greek. The apa, I don't know why that didn't go there. That's because I know what I did. All right. I know exactly what I did. No, wait. Oh, I got to be in Greek. There, now I feel better. I'll get back to English. Okay, so the apa emu, because the apa ends in a vowel and the emu begins in a vowel, they do the same thing in Greek that we do in English. They put an apostrophe, they eliminate the omicron at the end, and so that they don't have to pronounce two vowels together. That's all they're doing. And so it's apa emu. And it almost sounds, you almost pronounce it as if one word, apa emu. So you don't have apamu instead of apa emu. You don't have the two vowels together. We talked a little bit about the accents, which functions really originally as a pitch, but now we use it more of as a stress. There's three. There's called the acute, which has it, angling to from top to bottom towards the left, and then the reverse side. And there are rules for it. We'll touch them on theos. And a circumflex is like that wavy line. So we touched on those before. Syllabification is how to pronounce the word, and we can make this really hard, or we can do it very naturally. The nice thing about Greek pronunciation, it's the exact same thing we do in English. What we struggle with is in English we don't think about it, but because it's new to us in Greek, we think about it and we struggle with it. But and we're going to pronounce it and break our words up just like we do in English. You can do it in a very natural way, and I'll show you how to do that, or you can learn the rules. So we'll touch on both, so whatever works for you, and we'll go through it. The natural way is wherever there's a vowel, there's a different syllable. It's very much like English. Syllables are separated by vowels and or diphthongs. For example, and the consonants are grouped together with when it's following a vowel or diphthong. And I'll show you, for example. For example, when you say ego, there are two vowels. So there are two syllables. Is the first syllable, and go is the second syllable. Well, the syllables are separated by vowels. Okay, so there's a vowel and there's the first syllable. Consonants are grouped with its following vowel or diphthong. So the consonant is the gamma with the omega. So we have go, like let go of my ego. And so it's ego, that means I. And then how many syllables are in phone? Well, there's 2 vowels, so there's going to be 2 syllables. So it's very natural, phone. So I'm going to lead because the second rule here, syllabus are separated by vowels, and consonants are grouped with the following vowels. I get the theta, or the phi with the omega, and I get the phi with the omega and the nu with the eta, and I get phone. So phone. Christos, phone is voice or sound. Christos, again, when we have 2 vowels, so there are only 2 syllables. Now to figure out where you divide it. Well, in this case, I've got 2 consonants that can be said together, kri, and so we can say kri, and then Christos. We're going to start this consonant with, because ST can go together, and so it'll be Christos, which of course means Christ. 2 vowels, there are 2 syllables then. Ka, so in this case, because the zim really won't, the sigma mu won't go together well. So it's cosmos. I have the accent on the first syllable, so it's cosmos. And so I put my stress on the first syllable, cosmos. How many vowels here? Well, there are 3, the iota, the eta, and the diphthong, omicron, upsilon. So it's Zeus. Zeus. Well, that's Jesus. Zeus. How many vowels do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3. There'll be 3 syllables. There's the prophetes. Prophetes. The accent is going to be in the face, so it's prophetes, and so we'll put our stress on the fe. How many different vowels here? Well, the iota alpha is not a diphthong. If that was reversed, alpha iota, it would be a diphthong. But because it's not, there are 3 vowels and there are 3 syllables. There is car, let me do it here, cardia. Cardia means heart. The cardia. We'll put the stress on the middle syllable, cardia. And then we have a compound word. Compound words are divided where they're joined. Like in English, we have compound words. We have butterfly. We have other compound words. Well, this is a compound word where anti is a word all by itself. Christos, we've already learned up here. And so it's a compound word. So you first do, there's 2 vowels here, anti, and then there's Christos. So it's anti-Christos. Anti means against or before. So anti-Christos. And so if we practice our syllabification, we can do that either in a very natural way, or you can learn the rules, and we'll go over the rules very quickly. We've already mentioned this one. Where there's 1 vowel, there's 1 syllable. 1 diphthong, 1 syllable. So how many vowels in Akekamen? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 syllables. So 5 vowels, 5 syllables. And then I have a consonant. We're followed by another vowel. Those go together. Ak. And then our kappa with the omicron with the accent. So it's ak-ka. And then this is all by itself. And then min. Ak-ka-min. And then we go from there to, and let me get to my notes here. Okay, so the second rule is that where there's a single consonant by itself, it's not a cluster, that goes with the following vowel. So you see the single consonant, the row, it goes with the following vowel. The single consonant, the kappa, it goes with the following vowel. The single consonant, mu goes with the following vowel, epsilon. Yes, there's a nu at the end, but that mu goes with this epsilon, and the nu goes with the epsilon. So it's e-o-ra-ka-men. E-o-ra-ka-men. And so that's how we pronounce that. We look at 2 two consecutive vowels that do not form a diphthong are divided. We've already seen that. So here you have the epsilon and the alpha. That's not a diphthong. So those are separated. E, the, a, sa, me, tha. E, the, asam, e, the, asametha. E, the, asametha. And you just want to keep pronouncing it and practicing it in that manner. A consonant cluster, which is two or more, that cannot be pronounced together is divided, such as a mu and a p. You cannot pronounce mu and p as in one syllable, so they get divided. So you have an m, pra, sten. And so emprasten. And the emphasis is on there. So smooth breathing. There's the accent. It's the acute accent. Doesn't really matter what it's called. That's not something I think we need to focus on. You'll find it used different ways. Acute, and the grave will be at the end, and there's reasons for that. But at this level, it's just not important. The fact that it's there is important. It's extremely important to recognize that the accent is there, as well as the rough breathing mark, because there are actually words that have different meanings without the breathing or the breathing marks. Rule 5 is the flip side to the consonant. A consonant cluster that can be pronounced together goes with the following vowels, such as the kappa, the ki and the rho. They go together. The sigma and the tau, they naturally go together, and so you get Christos. And so the emphasis is on the omicron. Here, double consonants are divided. That's important. You'll see why, especially here in a couple moments. So the two rows are double consonants. They're divided. And so you say paresia, paresia. And then compound words are divided or joined, like we've already mentioned. So on-t is a compound word. Christos is another word, anti-Christos. And so all we've done tonight is we've looked at the vocabulary, punctuation, the 3 different accents. I don't really care if you know what they're called, the acute, the grave, and the circumflex. It's important to recognize that they're there. It's important to recognize where the stress of the pronunciation goes on that syllable. It's important to recognize how the words are pronounced and how they're divided. If you think too hard, you're going to struggle. You already know how syllabification. You naturally break it up as you read it. Sometimes a big word you might struggle with. I do. So that's the first stage of grammar, is learning the vocabulary and pronunciation along with the what do you call it? Not the pronunciation, but the punctuation. And then we have vocabulary. Vocabulary is in the back of the book, or back of chapter 4, starting on page 16 and goes through page 18. It is important that you learn vocabulary. One of the things that I found is that when I teach the class is that when I took this, and I know when Jeremy took this class at Freed-Hardeman University, it is a 15-week class for 3 hours a week. They used to have those separated, an hour and a half one day and an hour and a half another day. I think they've combined it now. I'm not sure. But it's still 3 hours of 15 weeks. And Georgia School of Preaching, right now we're in quarter hours. And that's 13 weeks. And we only do 2 hours. So ultimately, we're not going to spend as much time on something as we did in Freed-Hardeman. When they teach this class at Amherst University, it is a 14-week class at 4 hours a week. And so we're not spending the same amount of time, so something has to give. What we'll probably give is something that you could do more on your own, and that's the vocabulary. So we won't spend as much time, but we will spend time on the vocabulary because we want to learn to pronounce it and what it means. Normally, after you've had time to look at the vocabulary, I'd ask you to pronounce it and you to tell me what it means. At this case, 1, we're not communicating, and 2, you haven't had, this is the first week. So chapter 4, you need to learn the vocabulary because next week we need you to be responding to it. We'll do this review. There is something that we didn't touch on when there are 2 consonants that like a gamma gamma, two consonants where or a consonant that follows a gamma. I forget which ones. Basically, it's gamma gamma, and I forget what the other ones were. I'll find that on page chapter 3 on page 9, section 3.3, number 4. A gamma usually is a hard G sound, as in get. We did that. However, when it's immediately followed by another gamma, a kapta, a xi, or a ki, it's pronounced as a N, a nu. And for example, here's where we see this example. This is not agelos, it's angelos. So this has an N sound to it, where this keeps the hard G sound. So if you have a gamma that's followed by another gamma, or by a kappa, or a ki, or an xi, the first gamma is going to have an N sound to it. So in this case, it's angelos. Now, you'll find in the back of your book, definitely learn to use the book. The back of your book is, number 1, is a dictionary, and at the very back. And this is very similar that you'll find in a lexicon. A lexicon is nothing more than a glorified dictionary. It has a lot more information than a dictionary does, so it's called a lexicon. Here, this dictionary includes, as you see, what's called the lexicon form. And so you have the word, and then you have, if it's a noun, you'll have a dash, and in this case, omicron, upsilon, comma, and then an omega, or excuse me, an omicron with a rough breathing. This is an article. We'll get to that a little later, probably a couple of weeks from now. But my point is when you pronounce this word, learn the rest of this in your vocabulary. Don't cheat yourself, because later on it will cost you if you don't learn this. You may not understand what it is, but at this stage it doesn't matter. So it's pronounced like this. It's angelos, or instead of the loss, it'd be angelu. So angelos, angelu, and this is the rough breathing with the omicron, so it's ha. Angelos, angelu, ha. That's the lexical form, and I do want you to learn that. It will make a tremendous difference. It will make your life so much easier if you begin this at this stage, rather than try to pick it up later. And you'll see why in the next few weeks. So, without trying to go too much detail here. So, angelos, we're not able to communicate, but think in your mind, what might that mean? It sounds so familiar. Angelos is like angel. Well, that's what it is. It means angel. Also can mean messenger. And so we also have, here we have 2 vowels, and so there's 2 syllables. Amen. Well, we say amen all the time. Amen is the Greek pronunciation of it. It means amen, which is a transliteration. Right? You know that a translation is taking a word to then translate what it means in a different language, English. So we could translate amen to mean truly or surely, which we'll find many Bibles will say truly, truly, Jesus said, or surely, surely, Jesus said, amen, amen. Or you can actually transliterate it, which we take the Greek alphabets, put it into English, A-M-E-N. The E is a little bit of variation, but amen. And so we'll say, amen, amen, Jesus said. And so amen means amen, or truly, or surely. There are 1, 2, 3 vowels. Now we go back to amen. There's no other, amen has no other, this is the lexical form. You don't have anything more to learn with that. Here is a noun, and it has what's called a genitive. We'll get to more of that later. An alternate ending. Okay, there are alternate endings. And so there are 1, 2, 3 vowels, so there are 3 syllables. Anthropos, anthropos. Or if we say it as anthropu with the omicron upsilon ending. So we replace the omicron sigma put the Omicron U, it'd be anthro, not pos, but anthropu. And then you have the article ha. Anthropos, anthropu, ha. What does anthropos mean? Might recognize that because generally speaking it means man or mankind. It's not necessarily masculine in referring to a male, although it could. It can refer to people in general, male and female. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 vowels. So there are 4 syllables. A, pa, sta, los. Apostala, apostolos. There's my stress. So apostolos. Well, apostolos you might know as apostle. That's a transliteration. It means messenger. And so it would be one messenger who carries a message. Apostolos or apostolou, ha. And so that's how you would learn that. And then we have, here's a capital or uncial or majuscule letter. This is the gamma in capital form. So there's 1, 2, there's a diphthong, so that's one, the functions as one vowel. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4 vowels. So that's 4 syllables. So we have ga, li, li. There's the diphthong for I, the alpha iota. So li, ah. Galilea, Galilea, or in the genitive form it would be Galileos. Hey, it's this is the rough breathing over the eta. So Galilea, Galileos, hey. And then we have 1, 2 vowels, 2 syllables. Gra, fe. The stress is on the fe. Gra fe or gra face. With the article, the eta with the rough breathing, hey. Grafe, grafes, hey. What does grafe mean? Excuse me. Well, it sounds like writing, doesn't it? So grafe is the oftentimes means scripture or writing, and so we'll look something up real quick because it has multiple, writing or scripture, and then this is 2 syllables, doc, and this is that zeta, and it's in the middle of the word, and so we would have the DZ sound to it, dotza. That's wrong. Let me correct that. So that looks wrong. Jeremy should have corrected me right away. Let's make sure I'm in Greek. And it should be, there we go. Okay. Still 2 syllables, but now I have the C sound. And so it's doxa, doxa or doxase, hey. And doxa, it means glory or majesty or fame. One thing about the meaning of words, as we said, there's no such thing as a word for word. Generally what we say is there's a range or a gloss of meanings. And this is where the art comes in. Basically, when we say, for example, this can mean glory or majesty or fame, you as the translator have to determine what English translation best fits the intent of the original author, and what would the audience have understood it as, glory or majesty or fame. They essentially might mean the same thing, but there's different nuances to those, and so it becomes an art for you to determine what the right translation actually is. So doxa, doxase, hey. And here's 2 syllables, so we get go. Smooth breathing, there's no sound added to the go. This is a verb. We're not going to do, make that mention. We're going to use what's track 1. If you go to page, well, I'm thinking about this real quick. So right after, I think it's just before chapter 10 in the book. Yeah, it's right after chapter 9. Let's see. Yes, on page 73, there's 2 tracks to go through. I generally use track 1, mostly because that's kind of how I learned it. The difference is you basically go through pretty much the noun system before you get to verbs. There's a great value in that. It's so much easier to learn the noun system as one group, one clump, and then switch to verbs, because verbs is a different animal. It's like learning, you know, a cat versus an elephant. They're just totally different. And so it, rather than track 2, which a lot of schools, I know for a fact at Amherst University, for example, they don't use this book, they use a different book, but they'll introduce verbs very, very early. That's, to me, you're going back and forth from one system to another. Let's get strong in one system, and then we'll learn verbs. What our hope is before we go through the end of the 13 weeks, we'll pretty much go at your pace. We could spend all our time on just the nouns, or we could get to just introduce the verbs and start with the verbs before we end our 13 weeks. It depends upon the pace, and that's where we need feedback from you. Otherwise, I'm just talking and I'll become hoarse and we'll never make it. So ego means I. It's a verb. You will learn some verbs, even though we haven't learned the verb system, because it's important to learn certain verbs in order to be able to do translations. So some key ones they're going to give you up front, such as ego. That means I. There's 1, 2, 3 vowels, so there are 3 syllables. Eschatos, eschatos, or eschate, or eschaton. So this is not a noun. You'll learn adjectives when we get to chapter 9. This is an adjective, but it's important. They want you to learn it early. So eschatos, eschate, eschaton. There's a reason why they're done this way, and we won't get into it at this stage. But ultimately, just recognize that this word eschatos could be eschate or eschaton. It means the exact same thing, which is last. Eschatos means last, or you get the last things, general last things. And then we go to two syllables, 2 vowels, zoe. Zoe is life. Zoes means life. Zoe, zoes, hey. And this one, hopefully you might have heard it before. 2 vowels, 2 syllables. Theos, 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 theu, ha. Theos means God. Now, this does not necessarily mean the one true God that we know. It could be lowercase God. Just because here's a capital the, which I don't know why it's capitalized. Let's see. Let me see if I'm still in Greek or English. Yeah, I'm still in Greek. It's my plan. That would be the lowercase. It doesn't matter in Greek if it's lowercase or uppercase. You have to determine by context whether or not this is speaking to the one true God or to some other pagan god. And so theos, theu, ha, God. And then there's this word is the most word in the New Testament. 2 syllables, 2 vowels, kai. Kai can have multiple meanings. Its predominant meaning is and. That's why it's so predominant in the New Testament. I forget, it's used 6,000. Well, I think it tells us in our book. If you look in, 9,000 in your book on page 17, they put the number of time it's used, 9,018 times in the New Testament. It's the most used. It can mean and, even, also, namely. It can also mean but, and a few other things. Context will tell you how to translate that, but and is the predominant, the primary meaning. Primary meaning because it's most used. 1, 2, 3. This is not a diphthong. So there's 3 vowels, 3 syllables. Ka, car, di, a. Cardia. Well, if we think about cardia, a cardiologist, that's a heart. Cardia or cardios hey. Cosmos, 1, 2 syllables. Cosmos, accent here. Cosmos. Cosmu, ha. Oh, cosmos means, normally I'd ask the class, and you would all say universe, world, or humankind. Logos. Now, here's where a lot of people will pronounce this as logos. Funny thing, there's a Bible software called Logos. If you call them one day, they'll answer Logos. If you call them another day, someone else will answer and say Logos. I learned the Erasmus system, and I'm more comfortable with it. If you want to make it more of the what they refer as classical or the modern, it would be Logos. But Logos or Logu, this is a diphthong, and ha, Logos, Logu, ha. And here we have a word that a lot of people pronounce differently. I keep the P silent. That's just how I've learned it. Some people will put the P and make pnu. This is a diphthong. There's one syllable. There's another syllable. So pneuma or pneuma. I'm more comfortable with pneuma. I've kept the P silent, but if you really want to work hard and say pneuma, that's fine. But I'm going to say what's silent. Pneuma or pneumatos. Ta. Here's another article with the tau omicron, no breathing, no rough breathing, but a accent mark. What would pneuma mean? Spirit. Or wind, by the way, breath or inner life. Typically, we'll translate it either as spirit or wind, and then it's a matter of whether or not we're talking about the human spirit or the Holy Spirit. Context is what tells us the answer. And then we get into 1, 2, 3 syllables, so 3 vowels, 3 syllables. Prophetes. 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 And so that should sound familiar to you. That's like a prophet, a prophetes. Prophetes, prophetu, ha, prophet. And then we have 1, 2, 3 vowels, 3 syllables. Sob, remember we got these two consonants, and so we separate them in a pronunciation. So sigma, alpha, beta is sob, ba, ton. Sob, ba, ton. Sabaton. Accent here. What does sabaton sound like? Well, it's Sabbath. Sabaton, sabatu, two. And then I think we did this once already. 1, 2 vowels, 2 syllables. Phone, phone, phones, hey. Phone is typically pronounced or means a voice or sound or noise. Which one do you use? Depends upon the context. This one we've already done. Christos, Christou, ha, Christ. And then there's some names. Names are really generally easy. They'll use the capital letters because it's a name. Ab-ra-am. There's 2 vowels. We separate these 2 here. As we have 1, 2, 3. Ab-ra-am. Who's that? Abraham, ha, Abraham. This is my name. In Greek, this is the delta. And we have 2 vowels, da. This is the vid diphthong here. David, ha. I think this is found on page 18. And yeah, that's right. David, ha. Here's Paul's name. A diphthong and another vowel. So there's 3 syllables. Pa-los. Pa-los or palu, ha. Paul. Here's Peter's name, Petros, Petru, ha. And Pilate's name, there's 1, 2, 3 vowels, 3 syllables, Pilatos. So accents here, Pilatos, or Pilatu, ha, Pilate. And then we get Simon's name, Simon, Simonos ha. And so that runs you through chapter 3 and 4 as an introduction. Basically, the bottom line is you have to do it. Does no good for me to do it. That helps me. It's always a good refresher, but you have to do it. Treat every homework problem as a test. It's not a test, but you can get the answers. I showed you where to get the answers on BBG. The answers to all the homework are there. You could use that, but that does you absolutely no good, because if you need to treat the homework as a test so that you can see how much you've learned, I don't mind you checking your work, but I wouldn't recommend you go back and correcting all your work. Do it yourself. If you want to check it, fine. If not, my grading system is very lenient. I use what's called a square root. What's it called again? I think it's in here. Jeremy, I do this this grading system. It's called a square root curve, and basically what it does is it makes it so much easier for those students that are really struggling because the teacher's not done it well, or because the material is not as strong, or because you haven't been able to spend the time. Ultimately, it accounts for the fact that we're not spending as much time in the classroom as we did in other classes. And so the square root curve, if someone is doing poorly, basically brings them up closer to those who might be more natural at it. And so basically it's a pretty, you know, you have to not do the work to fail. Okay, put it that way. If you do the work, you're probably not going to fail. For homework is in chapters 3 and 4 of the workbook. Do both chapters 3 and 4. They're pretty short. Basically, you're practicing the alphabet, you're practicing the diphthongs, you're practicing the accents. There is at the back of the book of chapter 4 a reading. I think it's 1 John. I can't remember where it starts. I think it starts in chapter 1, verse 5, or I can't remember. However, it's nice for you to start pronunciation to read that on your own. But if you're struggling, look at it on yourself and try to pronounce the words. And then after you've looked at it some and you're feeling like, okay, I'm really not feeling great about this, go to billmounce.com. Go to the section I showed you under the class track 1. Go to chapter 4. And under chapter 4, there's a section under there called Hear, Bill, Read Exercise for chapter 4. And he'll read that very slowly and give you a chance to read it with them. And so it gives you a chance to be able to read with him and hear the pronunciation, and you to read, get feedback in terms of how he presents it. So that will help you, I think, in the reading. One of the reasons I like this book is there's lots of resources to help, especially when you don't have a study partner. A study partner makes a tremendous difference, but without it, these resources will make a tremendous difference. I think that's all I wanted to cover. I normally stop and ask questions, but I know Jeremy doesn't have any, and Patricia, we can't talk. So I think we'll leave it at that. Now, getting the homework to me is different. Normally I pick them up in class the next week. The best way is if you're able to scan it in and email it to me. My email's on the syllabus at domingue, domingue.dave@gmail.com. If you're not able to scan it in, take a picture of it, a JPEG, and forward it to me either as a text or an email, and I'll piece it together. And then makes my job a little harder, but you know, that's just the way life is sometimes. So whatever way you can get it to me, if you have problems, Patricia, just give me a call. We'll figure it out. My number's on there. Send me a text, and we can figure it out. It is important that you spend time in the homework. You spend time going through the vocabulary, and the homework's going to help you mostly with the grammar. You'll have to spend more time with the vocabulary, and so if you do that, you'll do well. That's all I have. I think we'll go ahead and close. Unless, you know, Patricia, you want to type in a question or something, or Jeremy, if you had a thought you want to add or something.
No, I just want to thank you for that. That was a good refresher. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate you being here, Jeremy. I know that you got other things, but I appreciate the support and the help. Patricia, I'm thankful for your presence, even though we're not able to communicate at this time. Not fully anyway. Hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully what I said makes sense. The nice thing about this is recorded. I will send an email. I hope it's recorded. You know, I normally see a button that says recorded, but I don't see that anymore. I think I saw one that says recorded. So I will, when I figure out how to put the recording onto the website, I will send you an email and with the link so you know where to get it, and that way you have it as a review. You can what he say, I don't understand, and you go back. Probably for this section not so important, but when we get to some other things, you might want it. It's there for you to as another help. So I think with that we'll close with a prayer. And if you'll bow with me. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity. We thank you for Patricia and for Jeremy for taking the time to gather together to study more of your word in the Koine Greek. We pray that you provide us the wisdom to understand and the courage to use it in our daily lives as we draw closer to you and to others, that we can use it in our ministry to help others to draw closer and to know you more deeply. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hopefully we'll get together next week, and I will follow up with the other guys to see what the status is, and we'll figure it out. I appreciate
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Patricia.